Hello everybody, and welcome back to a brand new video. Before we get into this video, please go follow me over on Instagram at RyanJakubowski_3. That would be great because, again, I'll be posting updates there, and it's a great way for you to follow me if you do not already. You can also go follow my Twitter at RyanJakubowski. You can go read my newsletter, or my writing rather, at ryanjakubowski.substack.com. But with that out of the way, let's talk with this video because this is an interesting video. I think it's important to talk about. Every couple months we'll be checking back in because we're still, we still have a while to go till 2024, but at the same time, we're already beginning that process. So, the first thing I want to say here is that I think Trump is favored to win the Republican nomination. I don't think that it's a lock or that he's even, 89% chance of winning it. But to me, at this point in time, he's clearly ahead of DeSantis, and the polling we have for the most part reflects that. And so DeSantis is a lane. I think, we're still a year and a half away from the election, and a lot of things can change in a year and a half. But I think right now Trump is pretty clearly the unequivocal favorite to win that nomination if I were a betting man. Now, in a matchup against Joe Biden, presidential, I think he'd be an underdog. Now, I know a lot of people think that he's like guaranteed to lose, that there's no path for him. I disagree with that. I think Trump would have a 40% chance, maybe 35% chance of beating Biden, which is still pretty good, by the way. And in 2020, my final calculation gave him a 42% chance of winning. The day of the election, I said he had a 42% chance of winning, and he came really close. He was like, if you applied a 1% swing to the entire country, right? Like if you swung every state just 1% towards Donald Trump, he would have won, because he would have won Wisconsin, Georgia, and Arizona. That would have given him the presidency, right? And so he was really close in 2020, even though he was, for the most part, counted out by a lot of people. He was really close in he won 2016, even though he was counted out by a lot of people. And I think people are counting him out again just because his brand of politics is unique and doesn't necessarily appeal to as many people. But again, he has a big base. He's won elections before, and I think we still have a while to go. Biden is kind of at a high point right now, but he's still not that popular. He's still, old. He's not the most inspiring incumbent objectively, regardless whether you plan on voting for him or not. He's not, charismatic or not super energetic. And so I think that at this point in time, Biden would be a favorite, and he has his advantages, but clearly the race would be close. And I think Trump would have a lane until the very end. So let's talk about Trump's path here, because I think as of right now, this would be his, best strategy to get to that 270 electoral vote number. So let's start by just filling out states we don't really need to talk about here. I'll put the likely states too, because I think that they're not really worth discussing for the most part. Again, because, some of these states might be closer. Some of these states might actually, come kind of within a couple of points, but realistically, they're not flipping. So Biden stays at 225 no matter what happens. Trump will just give him the states that we're assuming he's going to win should he win the presidency. Again, states like Kansas could be close and can have a Biden blowout scenario. But it like if Trump were to win the presidency, it would not really be that close. So, all the usual suspects. We'll put Florida there too. And then the first thing I want to talk about is Texas. So Texas, as we know, give Texas to Biden, he would almost win the presidency. He'd only need to win one more of these states. And if he wins Texas, he's probably already winning most of these states. So Trump needs to win Texas. I think it would be closer than some people would maybe be anticipating. But he'd still need to win it to have any chance of winning the presidency, right? Like it's been a massive red state for a while, and Republicans, once they lose Texas, they have to do a lot of hard thinking about how to win over a lot of blue states to make up for that. So Texas, I think, stays with the Republicans in 2024, no matter what happens. I shouldn't say no matter what, but like barring a Trump versus Biden matchup, that unless it goes horribly wrong for Republicans, I think it stays blue, or stays red rather. I cannot talk today. But yeah, Texas probably be within 5, would still vote for Trump. Florida could be 5 or 6, but I think it would just be in that range just to kind of avoid any controversy here. I'll put it in the likely Republican column. But yeah, Trump 219 electoral votes. Again, I think this is kind of his realistic floor for 2024. I know he might lose Texas in a worst case scenario, but realistically, I think it's staying red, as I just talked about. And so that's his floor, 219 electoral votes. So he needs to win, from these remaining states, some combination of 61 to get the presidency. And there's 94. So he has to win the majority of these states. So then these remaining states, I think we kind of have to rank them in order of most likely to vote for Trump to least likely. And I think there's a pretty obvious number one. That's North Carolina. And right now, I know a lot of people actually have Biden narrowly favored to win North Carolina, but I think Trump holds on to it no matter, or not no matter what. But I think right now, first of all, he'd be winning it in a normal scenario. But let's just say he's winning presidentially, he'd have to win North Carolina. Like, there's not really a realistic scenario in which Trump wins the election but loses North Carolina unless 100,000 Democrats migrate to North Carolina and move out of Georgia, right? Like, not going to happen. So North Carolina, to me, is interesting because there's a lot of ways it could go down, but I think Trump's best bet would be hoping that black turnout continues to fall in the rural part of the state and that he can just do just well enough in the Charlotte and Raleigh, kind of the Research Triangle area, to hold on to the state. So let's just assume that happens because, again, it needs to happen for Trump to win. If he's winning North Carolina by upwards of 2, I think he takes Nevada as well. In Nevada, look, I think it'll be close to either way, but there's a pretty clear path for Trump here, right? Joe Lombardo won the governor race. House Republicans did win the overall vote share in the midterms. And right now, I would argue that Republicans are long-term looking at a pretty good future in Nevada because all Trump would have to do is kind of get out the rural base, which he did in 2016 and 2020. So I think it's reasonable to expect him to do that again. And he would just need to do a little better in Las Vegas, which Republicans didn't actually do that bad in Las Vegas this year. I know they didn't really get rewarded for it federally, but they had some decent results in Clark County, and Clark County as a whole has been shifting towards the GOP. And so if Trump can just continue that swing, he'll probably win Nevada. So those, I think, are his first 2 states that are kind of his better bets. Now, for Biden, I think he wins Michigan. Again, Republicans haven't really done well in Michigan since 2016, and before that, it was a while before they'd actually won a federal race there. And so Biden might not win Michigan by as much as we're expecting in this scenario, but he'd still probably win it by 2 or 3 points. The suburbs are rapidly shifting to the left. Republicans have struggled a lot with working class voters here as of late, despite originally having a seemingly bright future with them. On top of that, when you look at Democratic counties in the state that are growing or that are at least helping Democrats out, above their expected percentage, they're doing well in Kalamazoo. They're doing well in Grand Rapids, and they're holding on to their numbers in Flint, Saginaw, and to an extent Macomb, which are working class areas that are kind of north of Detroit. And they were shifting against Democrats, but Democrats did really well there last November. So I think either way, Biden holds on to it. And just like that, we're at almost a tie. And I'm actually about to tie it up because we're going to give Nebraska District 2 to Biden by a likely. He won it by 6 points in 2020. It's super left running. I don't think it's competitive in 2024. So we're tied now. And looking at these states, I think that they're all in pretty much the same ballpark, except for Wisconsin. Wisconsin's the first I want to give to Trump here. I think he's actually favored to narrowly lose it in 2024 as of right now. But literally, I did the calculations. I have him losing it by like 0.2%. So it's the purest of toss-ups for 2024 right now. But again, in a scenario in which he wins, in a scenario in which he does a little better than I'm expecting, let's say he takes Wisconsin by a point or 2, right? Winning kind of by a Ron Johnson margin, which, Ron Johnson proved that Republicans can still win Wisconsin even when they underperform, right? Because Evers won the governorship by 3.5 and Johnson managed to hold on. So I would say at this point that in Wisconsin, Republicans do have a path. Trump would underperform Johnson in Waukesha County and, those suburbs of Milwaukee pretty badly no matter what happens. But he would do better with rural voters because, again, rural Wisconsin was not great for Republicans last November. I'd also assume that Donald Trump would get out the base with working class voters in the Driftless region. And then these remaining 3 states, I think they're all pretty similar. You can make individual arguments for all of these, but I think that the first thing I want to do here, just to make things, fun, I guess, is give Joe Biden the state of Georgia. And that gives him 257 electoral votes. And so he could actually win Arizona and still lose the election, but we're not going to touch that yet. But let's talk about Georgia because Georgia is really interesting. Georgia proved in November that it's still willing to vote for Republicans, but not really Trump Republicans. Again, Herschel Walker did uniquely poorly in a year where Republicans otherwise did pretty well in Georgia. So I would say Trump would still lose Georgia even if he wins the election because it's super left trending. It's really hostile to his kind of brand of conservatism. And just in general, like Biden, has suffered a lot since he's won the presidency in terms of approval rating. Georgia was bad for him, but it's still like elected Raphael Warnock, and he's still polling ahead of Trump there from what I've seen. So I think Georgia, DeSantis and Haley could win it if they get the nomination, but Trump, I just think, is just so bad in those Atlanta suburbs that are just so important for Republicans that I don't see it. Now, I'm going to give Trump Pennsylvania here because, again, I think he would need it to win the presidency, and that gets him to 270, meaning that he would win if he wins Pennsylvania. So, again, just because we're making this the most likely scenario, I think he'd still lose Arizona. Although, again, it would be really close, and I think you could easily make an argument for him winning it if he wins Pennsylvania. But I think Pennsylvania is just a little more elastic than Arizona. I say that because, first of all, in November, we saw two really different elections in Pennsylvania. We saw Fetterman beat Dr. Oz by 5%. Well, we also saw Josh Shapiro win by 15% against Doug Mastriano. Both those races were pretty polarized, right? Like, they both got a lot of media attention. They both, featured pretty high-profile Democrats running against, Republicans who became infamous, I guess you could say. And so that led to Pennsylvania kind of being the center of attention for 2022. And Democrats did really well there, but Shapiro still ran 10% ahead of Fetterman. And that shows that I think Pennsylvania is willing to split its ticket or kind of maneuver a lot. And so on one hand, Biden would be benefiting from, a lot of things like the suburb shifting left and the fact that, Fetterman and Shapiro did pretty well in rural Pennsylvania. But again, crank up that rural turnout. Maybe Trump can overperform a little bit in the suburbs, and he's right there. Because, again, he only lost it by a point in 2020. And in 2020, Biden kind of won Pennsylvania with, an interesting coalition that he did really poorly with rural voters. But he was able to hold on to Scranton and, that kind of right-trending working-class area. And so, again, if those areas trend right, while Trump continues to build on his gains in the rural areas, he can absolutely win Pennsylvania. Again, not the most likely outcome, but I think that would be his path to victory, as opposed to Arizona, which I think is just like Georgia, right? It will vote for Republicans when they're not super Trumpian, but his brand just proved toxic in Arizona in November. Republicans blew a super winnable governorship. In Carrie Lake ran a super Trumpy campaign, and she lost by, I think, 19,000 votes or whatever, right? Like, she came 19,000 votes or however many votes within winning the Arizona governorship for Republicans, and she lost just because she did so badly in those Phoenix suburbs, right? Like, she lost a congressional district that David Schweikert won, right? So that's just my example for Arizona, but I think it applies to the whole state. The suburbs are clearly very anti-Trump and his brand of republicanism, and I don't think that even in a scenario in which he wins the election, he wins Arizona. Now, in a best case, I think he wins both Arizona and Georgia, but let's just say, realistically, we're trying to get him to 270 in the easiest way. I think this is what happens. So, again, this isn't my prediction. This is just what I think would happen if he were to win narrowly, or what his easiest path to 270 would be. So if you enjoyed, please leave a like. Comment down below what you think. Do you think he'd win Arizona before Pennsylvania, or do you think he'd need Georgia? Tell me what you think is going to happen, and I'll see you all in the next video.